Welcome back to Woodland Pools. I just got back from the Rare Evo conference here in warm, sunny Colorado, and while I was there, I had a chance to sit down with Damon from Charli3. We caught up on the last year, what's changed since the last time we talked, and everything coming up for Charli3 in the future. It was an awesome conversation. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Woodland Pools. We are here at Rare Evo 2023.
Yeah.
We have Damon from Charli3.
Yes.
So good to chat with you again.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, it took us 3 takes to get that started. He was messing with me
Oh
before
no,
we
the
started,
takes
but-
will be in
yeah.
there for sure.
Anyway, so thanks for sitting down.
Yeah.
It's so good to be here. So we've talked at this point almost exactly a year ago.
Yep.
We
pretty
spoke
close.
at the summit in 2022 in Switzerland. And for those that saw that, you know, maybe some of this will be a refresher, but I thought that for those that haven't, that are maybe not familiar with Charli3 or who you are or what you guys do.
And oracles and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So it might be good. What I thought today, let's have a conversation about some of that stuff, like a quick refresher at the beginning, but then let's talk about like what are the things that, so what's been happening in the past year,
Sure.
and then what are you guys looking at moving forward? So who are you and what is Charli3? Let's start with that.
Who is me? I'm Damon. I am the CMO/CEO of Charli3. It's a dual CEO situation. We are an Oracle company. If you don't know what blockchain oracles are, can I get into this right now?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah.
If you don't know what blockchain oracles are, basically anything your trading platforms that you're on, external. So not DEXs, not centralized exchanges. But external things, like so in Cardano, we're looking at Indigo or LendFi or other borrowing platforms. We will be able to provide that data in a way that is trusted and can't be tampered with, basically, so you know that you're trading on the right values. But typically, like the higher overarching thing of what an oracle is that we're able to take data from either off blockchain or on blockchain from all the different sources and be able to manage it appropriately, make sure it's valid, and be able to provide that so your trading applications can use it and you're not losing any money. So really it's like a pass-through system, I guess, the easiest way I could put it.
But what's interesting about it too, and I think something that wasn't like immediately obvious to me when I was first getting into blockchain, that I think for some people like may not realize, like for you at this point it's kind of a given, but like when you think about the notion of like a smart contract, which in itself is an overloaded term, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of things, but when you think of the notion of like what a holistic smart contract is that has both the on-chain and off-chain elements and whatever else, even the on-chain and the off-chain parts are still only their domain is only just within that same blockchain itself. And so I think for a lot of people it's kind of surprising to learn that, where because it's decentralized and distributed around the world, you think, oh, okay, so it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It is, it's spread everywhere, but it's still very much in its own bubble, right?
Yeah, I mean, something I try and talk about with blockchain, because people, like you're saying, it's an overarching term that people think it's everything, but like each blockchain is a different language, right? It's its own bubble.
Right.
And we're only specified for Cardano specifically, so people talk about other oracles. If you're out there and you know other oracles like Chainlink or something, they go, oh, well, they can service everyone. It's like, well, they can't, because it's a different language they have to be on. Right?
Well, but I even take it one step further, even one step back from that, is that like, so there's all these other blockchains that are all their own bubbles.
Yeah.
But even then, they're completely siloed to do their own internal logic of passing their own transactions around, and then the oracle is really kind of the instance of the first time that one of these bubbles has any view to anything outside of itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that and then when you guys, like when you say that we offer things like price feeds, or we talked last year about like weather data and stuff like that, that's because, so to make sure everybody understands that like you've got the Cardano bubble and then the EVM bubbles and these other ones, whatever else. And they're all their own little like spheres, like a multiverse spheres, you know.
But they don't talk to each other.
But they don't talk to each other, and then they also, none of them inherently have a view outside of that bubble at all to anything like price feeds or anything like that. And that's where you guys come in. You're the interface that goes from the outside world into that bubble, so then those triggers can be fired and things can be done inside of like that blockchain.
So it's basically, we're like a data translator is another way I put it. Is like we can take that data from off-chain, like you're talking about weather or farming or shipping or manufacturing, whatever's in the real world, right? And then we can translate that to the code base that's used in our bubble and put that in, right? So that's that, it's that outside communicator is the way to do it. It's just need people that have that use case for it, and then we can do it. I mean, one of the people we're thinking about trying to talk to now at Rare Evo here, there's the, there's actually a FedEx office right there, but there's somebody from FedEx that's going to be talking, and I want to try and talk to them about, what are you doing with all of your shipping data? Like, if you want that to be more specified and put it on chain for historical records,
right.
We could do that, but nobody else could.
Well, what's cool about that, and by the way, I'm thinking we'll just kind of talk through whatever comes up, right? So we don't necessarily have an agenda here, but that makes me think about what's cool about that is that so there would be the approach of FedEx wanting to put their stuff on chain, but FedEx working with an Oracle would be kind of interesting because they don't necessarily need to be on chain at all.
They don't
but it could be that through the Oracle, it could be that once a thing has arrived at my house, then an NFT shows up in my wallet or something like that.
Yeah,
so the actual transaction of the shipment doesn't have to be on chain, but with you guys getting that feed from them and sending that on chain, like the trigger, then that could trigger all kinds of other things, right?
It could even just be your trigger of the updates of exactly where it stops along the way. You get that already, but it's not always historically written there for looking back on for insurance purposes and stuff like that too, right?
You know what's so cool? It's got me thinking about
same thing with insurance companies. They can go back and forth between the claimant or the insurance company on, say, for weather, right? If a flood happened in the area and somebody says, oh well, my house got flooded, and then the insurance company goes, well, yeah, there was a lot of rain in that area, but we know that area of where you are didn't get any, so did you falsify your claim?
Interesting.
Or the opposite, to say, no, this weather did happen for the claimant, this actually does happen, we did have this problem, you can't dispute that, here's all this other data, right? So it can happen with a lot of insurance things. This happens on other chains a little bit in certain places, but it's still really not explored at all. This is for what's the future of blockchain, how can it be more real-fi related, and for shipping, same situation.
Well, that's so cool, because the other thing it makes me think about is so we were just having lunch with Patrick from NMaker and AdaMail, and actually I'm going to sit down with him next. But you just give me an idea of potential integration there, where you could have something where your updates from FedEx could be tied to an Oracle that sends a message to your AdaMail, for example.
Yep.
So you're getting all the messages to your wallet based off things that are happening on chain.
You could even have something that's an automatic mint of a delivery NFT through NMaker.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. Anyway, so that's
your dev brain is going, oh, what can I build?
Well, it kind of reminds me, this is every time, that's why I love having these conversations, and I like having them sort of open like this, because it's I end up learning so much from you guys. Actually it was, there's Patrick over there. But so I literally, it was
sitting
here last year when Patrick and I really dug into a lot of the NFT stuff, and it's stuff that I kept thinking about for the full year. And since we were talking last year, I've referenced our conversation last year about oracles and stuff so many times in live streams and things.
Hopefully we get more.
Yeah, it's you guys should check out that conversation or whatever, because we this stuff I learned so much from it, and then from there I try and share it with other people. But this is these conversations are so good. So since then, so let's talk about then. That's where we can go, right?
Yeah.
So let's take a step back and so where are we at today?
Sure.
Where what is available through Charli3 right now? Maybe do you guys have any exciting and upcoming announcements that are right around the corner, right? And we can kind of look at that in terms of.
Do I speak about things?
Yeah. So let's start with where we're at today, right? If somebody, because the other thing too that I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about is when we talk about where we're at today, and for some of these feeds, on the channel we've talked a lot about. The extended UTXO model and UTXOs and datums and all these other things we've talked about in other streams. And I think it'd be interesting also to dig into then a little, not get too low level, but dig in a little bit into how is that price feed data or whatever else available, and how do people find that or whatever. So so anyway, we'll start with the basics.
We can get into that.
We'll start with the basics. What's available today?
Yeah, what's available today? I mean, right now we could do any off-chain stuff if you want, right? If basically the way the Oracle works is we attach to APIs, which are. What is an API?
Ooh, API. What does it stand for?
That's what I'm saying. You're the dev. You should.
I just know it's the calls that you make to get things something interface, automatic something. I don't know.
Close. Okay, that's your homework. Go look it up. Go Google API.
One of those terms that's those terms that use it so much that the fact that it's an acronym becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
For example, with SCUBA, what does SCUBA stand for? I have no idea.
I don't know what SCUBA stands. I scuba dive. Does it stand for
something? That makes me feel so much better. See? Yeah. Isn't that an acronym?
Yeah. I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Perfect. So now I feel better.
We're both dumb.
You're a scuba diver, doesn't know what SCUBA means, and I'm a developer, doesn't know what API stands for.
Okay, sweet.
Great.
So, anyway.
This is why we don't do edits. This is going to all be in there.
You were very close on the API thing, but go Google it.
Sure.
Anyway, so the Oracle node network, so the way it's decentralized is that we actually, as entity don't touch any of the data. It's a bunch of other people that go and grab it, and they're attached to different API points. So if any kind of company, like a gaming company or weather or like whatever, manufacturing, if anybody has that API, we can grab that data and put it on chain.
Yeah.
So that's all available, just needs to be requested.
And sorry, and with that, you can look at the definition of API, but what an API is, right?
Yeah,
is
yeah.
I guess for people that don't know, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's a common interface for a lot of times from a client to a server or between servers or whatever else to make requests in a standardized way that you can like ask for some information and that information comes back and you can consume it and do something with it.
Yeah.
And so in the Web 2 world, that's like insanely common, where you have that for all different kinds of interfaces of like all different kinds of APIs, like with FedEx, like you were saying. You could just ask FedEx if you have the right keys for tracking information or whatever else. And so then the thing is like that's what an API is, right? And so that's what we use it for. And so then we take this very Web 2 API thing that's prolific and exists everywhere. And now we're talking about like how do we bring that into Web 3, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if any of these companies have their data pushed in through this API unit, we can take that on. Right now, it's currently on the Cardano blockchains. We have a few different things running. The AP or ADA USD price feed is running. Shen USD price feed is running for Liquid, but it's open. Like the way Cardano works is it's a reference script, right? Or sorry, reference UTXO.
Yeah, reference input. Yep.
Yeah, reference input. So it's there so anybody can take it and use that data that's been put up. We'll get into why you might not want to do that without paying for the data yourself. So they pay for that one, but you could use it as long as...
Which one? Like Shen USD?
The Shen USD is up there. ADA USD is free. We subsidize that. Anyone can use it.
Yeah.
The parameters are set on that. And we have for, on the Indigo side of things, whether or not they use them, we're not sure yet, is price feed for their IUSD and their upcoming iEuro.
Okay.
Again, if they decide to use it, they're still deciding what Oracle solutions to use. We built it up there. It's up there.
Sure.
So, but the thing is that people think that, oh, those are the only feeds that we are running. That's the only thing we offer. That's not true. Every feed that is up costs us money. Every single update is a online transaction, on-chain transaction. So it costs us money. So just because we don't have more prices running or more weather stuff or track like shipping information, whatever, doesn't mean we're not capable of it. We can. It just needs to be requested and managed.
Right.
So one of the big things since last year is that we didn't have this like Oracle owner contract side of thing that we managed and the business model, right? We were just setting, these are our parameters for the feed, like how often is it updated, how many nodes are integrated with it, what's the deviation check?
Right.
Deviation check is if the price of the asset that we're tracking or putting on chain moves in a little bit, it'll trigger another update.
Oh, a follow-up to see,
outside of the regular. So right now our standard, what we think is the best practice for safety and cost on a business level is 1 hour updates of the data. We have a minimum of 3 nodes because our price that's posted on chain after this aggregation of different things. So we have a minimum of 3 nodes taking from 3 different sources of the same data because if you don't know, on different dexes or different exchanges, the liquidity for that asset will be different, and the trading mechanisms on there will actually show a different price because it's a different pool.
Right.
Right. So we aggregate that together, and then it takes a median set of data, and that's what gets pushed on the chain. But to make sure that nothing, if one goes down, we always have backup. So it's a minimum of 3. We prefer 5 for nodes. Same thing with sources of data, 3 to 5, and then that gets put on. So we say minimum 3 nodes, minimum of 3 sources, 1 hour heartbeat, and a 2% deviation price check. Yeah, tolerance check. Now, the owner, Oracle owner contract, so like with Liquid, they pay for the Shen feed, right, the Shen USD feed. Yeah. Now they could, as the payer, because they pay for that, they could change that around. They could put it to a 1 month update if they wanted to. Yeah. They could have it at a 0.5% update. They could have it at 10% update, right? So if you, but then they could also shut the feed down at any point that they want, right? So if you are someone who's a freeloader of this data, this reference input that's on chain, cool. But you have no control over how that data is pressed. If you need different parameters for your system that you've built, you can't use that same data. You'll need a separate feed pulled up from us that has different parameters on it.
Interesting.
Something that we, other things that we're pulling up new is the community feeds, so the catalyst that's coming out right away. So the community funded feeds is that now we'll have a DAO where the DAO can vote on the parameters and which feeds to run.
Oh, sure.
So, but that comes from the catalyst money, right? So it's not our own money that we're putting up for it, but the catalyst money, and then that anybody can use those we also have an idea for our next Oracle update, I guess, for our version 4. We're finishing up version 3 this week, which is a lot of security checks on the node network and an automatic payment system to the nodes. Right now it's been manual. So we have an automatic payment system that actually, talking about Patrick again, he told me a while ago that nobody has like an automatic payment from wallet to wallet based on a smart contract currently. And we do internally. We're just using it for ourselves. Cool. And it was like, oh, well, I guess we could market that if we want other people to use it for a payment system. So we have that. There's a lot of new stuff in the last year. But for the next system that we thought to be able to cut down costs, if people want for the Oracle stuff, is that if multiple projects want to use the same data, but they all want control over it, then they enter into a DAO contract together and they can vote on the parameters of that feed, how it works for them. So then everybody has ownership over it and it's never going to go down. But if say that feed costs, our average right now is it's 5 ADA per cycle. So per update, it costs about 5 ADA to do for posting it on chain. Okay. Right, so that's what it is. That's with our premium plus the costs.
Oh, I see. Is that because also too, because when you're posting it as an inline datum, so it's readable, which costs more.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's all transactions, right? So that's through through the whole node network, and then again we put like a 1 ADA premium on that for our cost. Right? So that's our costs currently. But say you wanted really fast updates, like faster than our standard, right? But you couldn't afford that all the time, you know. But if you split that cost now in this DAO contract with other companies, if you split that cost between 5 or 6 people, now you're only paying a fifth of what that is for the same thing, and you still own it. You just have to contact other people. So we'll have multiple ways to manage the Oracle service depending on how you want to do it, whether you use company ones, whether you try and freeload off other people, whether you will want to pay for your own or share it with other people. Cool. Yeah, all to mitigate costs and everything. It's about trying to be as fluid with the customers as possible. Right, interesting. So with that, so one thing that you got me thinking about that we talked a little bit about last year, but you kind of gave me this thought. So like, the upper end in terms of like how infrequent you want to do like updates, there's really no limit to. You could do a one-time update, or you do it once a year, or like, or whatever else, like depending on the frequency that's needed, right? But one thing that I've been wondering about for a while that you just reminded me is like about the lower end of updates, right? Like in terms of like what the highest frequency you can have, because like on the Cardano network, for example, right? The average, and a lot of people don't necessarily know this, that the average time between blocks is 20 seconds. 20 seconds, yeah. But sometimes, as we've seen like with like our pool, you can sometimes have like slot or hype battles that happen because you can have blocks that are actually scheduled in consecutive slots where they're 1 second apart, right? Yeah. And so it's, and also too, it can go anywhere. Sometimes you won't see a block for 90 seconds or more. And so with that, and this is not a Charli3 question or limitation, like in Oracles in general, how have people dealt with that in terms of things that need to be faster than every 20 to 60 seconds? Yeah, I mean, they don't, like we've had a lot of people come up, they do. What they do is they go to a centralized thing that doesn't actually post anything on chain. Got it. Right, so other services will read those APIs that get updated directly from the source. Got it. And then it's just information there, and then they take it and they put it into their platform. But it's not being written on chain, it's not decentralized, it can be manipulated at any point, but it's usually free. Well, the other thing too, I guess what you could do is if you do a hybrid of both. Yeah. If you guys are doing a steady stream of data and then just posting it whenever the next block comes in or whatever, then you can verify that these two things lined up at this time and the stream in between was just off of like a Web 2 API. Yeah. But when the actual blocks were minted, that's what validates that those things were valid or something. Yeah. So Liquid actually currently does that with the Shen USD feed. So they have a separate thing that's just a centralized whatever as a backup check to ours if ours were to fail or if they needed to validate or something. Okay. And which is great to have, the more redundancy the better if you can manage it. But as far as Cardano with us, we've had people come to us and say, oh, we need a 1 second update. Right. We're like, well, one, you would never be able to afford that. Right. Two, Cardano doesn't do that. Right, exactly. So I said our minimum currently limitations is every 2 minutes. So our deviation check is every 2 minutes. And the reason for that is processing time for the nodes to grab that data, to decide on consensus, to aggregate, to choose which node is actually going to post that that, and then post that. Like, it all happens decently quickly, but it's about 2 minutes. So that's why we have it every 2 minutes. So if you want to lower the cost of the Oracle aggregation stuff, if you don't have it all, you are getting an update every 2 minutes, at least a check on that deviation. So if you don't want it every hour, you could change it to once every 6 hours, once every day, or whatever, but you're still having that every 2 minutes check.
That's good to know. That's interesting. Because the other thing too, and this might be getting a little too technical, but I'm wondering too, but I'm wondering too if like, if I have not dug in yet to there's actually a Hydra workshop on Saturday morning that I signed up for.
George, who just walked by actually from M Labs, is doing a talk on the Hydra thing.
So I want to dig into that because we talked about Hydra a lot in the channel. The whole idea is that you spin up your Hydra head, you do quick communications back and forth, and then you only like tear down that head, and then the result of that goes on chain.
Yeah.
But I don't know the nature of those transactions, if they support things like metadata and some of these other things that
I don't know. We were asked to help build Hydra in the beginning, but we couldn't manage the resources to go away from it. But then we also thought, as far as an Oracle goes anyway, is that now that's actually taking data off-chain and then putting it back on, and is that decentralized or not?
Well, but what it makes me think about though is like, let's say for example, I want an Oracle service and I sign up with you guys, right? Yeah. Then maybe, assuming that, well, Hydra, it's an isomorphic state channel, so it's the exact same. It should be the exact same as the layer 1 chain, right? Yeah. So I would imagine those transactions should also support like full UTSO support, like datums and things like that. Because anyway, what got me thinking about is
it should be fine. We just haven't looked into it enough. Just like you.
Because what I'm thinking is like, let's say for example, I did for some reason need something that does have a 1 second interval.
Yeah.
Then you can get around both the problems of cost and interval speed if you have like a connected Hydra head where it's like, okay, you and I are chatting directly with the Oracle, and you're sending me feeds nearly instantaneously with the information that I need.
As long as where we're getting that information from is updated that quickly. That's another thing that people want. We had somebody come to us for gaming information, right? They wanted gaming results. And the problem was they wanted, like, we need something in mid-game to bet on a different play that might be played next time. Say, thinking American football.
Sure,
right?
yeah, totally.
What's the next play going to be? It's like, cool, but they aren't updating their data that quickly.
Exactly.
So how are we supposed to get it, right?
Well, but regardless, like, let's say you had that available, you could do a steady stream of transactions that has that data in it, and then the consensus that maybe to tear the head down once an hour or something. Yeah. You tear it down, post the results of what happened in the past hour to the chain, and then spin up another one, and again you have a steady stream going. Like that could solve both problems, right? And also because you're doing that, you have microtransactions and micro fees, so you could do lower fees, faster transactions, and only post on like larger snapshot intervals. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know,
you're totally right.
I think that could be a cool thing. If it's not supported yet, I could totally see like a version 2 or version 3 of Hydra being used for that kind of thing.
So we've talked about using Hydra or side chains, layer 2s or whatever for the next product that we would have. Chainlink has a similar product called on-demand oracles. We would call it on-demand validation because it's the same thing.
Sure.
But it's something like that, if it's for a game or a set piece of data that's only out for so long or whatever, right? You build up a head, you manage it for its off-chain computation, basically, and then the results get posted and then all of that goes down. So it's not continuous. Our current stuff right now is a continuous feed that it takes time to set up and take down, but for, on-demand stuff, we've talked about for a separate product for using Hydra for that because it's just much better and it would be faster and could potentially, depending on the use case of it and who's actually using it, how many updates are coming in from how many nodes, could like bog down the chain like on Cardano if it ever gets big enough. But putting it on Hydra would make sure that can happen because of the scalability of it. Yeah, and the cost would be much less as well.
Right. The other thing too you can do is like, another thing about it also is that like, you could even have multiple like Charli3 validator nodes, and it still wouldn't slow you down because you have the one consumer and multiple nodes, and as long as you're talking an order of magnitude of like 4 or 5 participants total, it's still nearly instant finality. So that'd be kind of cool. Okay.
Right now the nodes actually don't slow us down. We can add more nodes into it, but it's the payment that then, because each node will get paid a certain amount.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Okay.
So it becomes much more expensive the more nodes you add, but it doesn't slow down the transaction.
Yeah, well, this is all fascinating stuff. So let's. But before we're too long, I want to ask you at least 2 more questions, and maybe we can start wrapping up. Yeah. So I want to get an idea, like something we alluded to a little bit. I want to get an idea about, like, so for people that are curious, because we've done a lot of things on the channel about looking at inspecting transactions on chain and stuff like that, whatever. So I want to talk a little bit about. So Oracle provides this stuff, but where and how is it available? and then maybe then we'll wrap up with like, what are you guys looking forward to for the next year, right? So when we sit down to talk a year from now, where are you guys hoping that you're at?
Or whenever we talk.
Yeah, but let's chat a little bit about that. So I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that this is something where you the feed is just a transaction that's sent, and in the UTXO there's an inline datum with some information that can be read, and then that is how that information is parsed, right? Is that how
correct.
it works?
Yeah, and so you can read it all on Cardano Scan. You can look up the Oracle transaction stuff. I haven't been good enough about putting it out as marketing data, but it's all there. If anybody has a question, just send a message to us on Twitter. I'll give you the links. And that's exactly how that's posted, but it's also then broken down per node. So you can see how many nodes per final price are actually involved. So there's
Is that all in the datum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all in the datum. So you can see that all on Cardano Scan, each individual feed, which node posted what, and then the final aggregation thing that actually went on chain.
Okay.
So it's all, the entire process is documented and cataloged on Cardano Scan, but it is not an intuitive platform to use for a regular person. Like, it's hard to see.
Especially not because, so everything, just so you guys know, like we've talked a lot about these things, but like just another detail maybe to learn and know is that what actually goes on chain is what's called UPLC. I do know that acronym. Do you know that one?
No, I don't. Good for you.
Yeah, it's Untyped Plutus Core. Okay. And so it's Plutus Core. So if you break down what that means, it's Plutus Core, and Untyped. So there aren't data types wrapped around it. So what you end up seeing for a datum like that is just like an array of just like just numbers with no context because there's no types around them, right? And so that's how the transactions stay small is with that, but then they become very hard to read.
Yeah.
And so then that's why with things like Lucid or Aiken or whatever else, when you're then grabbing that data of information and you want to read it, then you kind of say, this is the shape that I'm expecting it to be in, and here's the untyped data, and then you can do that mapping, and then it becomes much more human readable.
And so we're working on that as well. So our last Catalyst proposal, we've been very behind on this, so sorry for you, community, is building like a dev portal. And part of this dev portal has feed portals, which will have a full historical charts of every data feed that we have up, exactly on every node, every last final transaction that's been put on chain, all of the nodes that were involved in that, which ones, like what they actually posted.
Right.
And then if you go into the chart, you can click on that, it'll give you the direct Cardano Scan link if you want, but it's all very readable for the dumb, normal lay person like myself. And then so it's all trackable, it's all there, it's in a database. I know our competitor's doing something different, but I think they're like storing all the data on Aave or something like that. But it's the same idea, right? You want to know the historical updates of an asset just to make sure, or even if you're just interested to see, and then we'll have that same link that you can go look at the actual Cardano Scan thing from a UI platform.
So you can read it, but then you can also dig into the UPLC if you want to see what's actually posted.
Yeah.
So with that though, and this is I think what you were kind of alluding to before, and you may have already answered this, but so then let's say there is a paid feed or an on-demand feed or something special like that.
Sure. Because
the nature of all of this is that it is on-chain, technically, if somebody knew the shape of that datum, they could just look at the feed and just consume that information themselves, right?
Yep.
But I guess that what you were getting at before is that it's not that the consumption of the information is gated, it's any influence you have over how often that happens or how that information evolves is where somebody would be like at a disadvantage, right?
Yeah, we call that feed parameters. So like, if you want to, I'll just use the ADA USD feed. It runs the same on our standard. And now if your platform wanted an ADA USD update every 5 seconds, or say every 2 minutes, because that's our capabilities, right? But we run it every hour with a potential check for an update every 2 minutes. But if you needed an update every 2 minutes, sorry, that's not our free feed. You will then have to pay for us to build up a whole new one with those parameters managed. And now it's a second feed of the same data, but getting put on chain, but updated more often.
But it is kind of a cool thing where this is probably not ideal for you guys from like a pricing and monetization
it's
standpoint.
Horrible. No.
Yeah. But it is kind of a cool from a consumer standpoint. Where let's say, for example, you're doing like a hobby project and you want to like, let's say, for example, you guys do enable some kind. I always like the idea of like weather feeds and things, right?
Sure, yeah.
That idea just always pops into my head. It may never actually be used, but like.
And somebody's using weather, like already paying for it, and you don't care what the parameters are, you can go and pick it up and use it.
So if you do like a hobby project and you know that some project is paying Charli3 to get weather feed data, if you know what that feed is, then you could always just like monitor that feed, and maybe again you have no influence over how often it happens, but you also have access to it because it's on chain and it's
and there's some projects coming up right now that are using that on testnet or even on mainnet. They're fucking around with the ones that are already there. But not making money or anything off of it.
So right, I suppose what you could do if you wanted to have it that it is traceable, but if it was something proprietary, you could always just like encrypt or hash it in some way, and you post that instead of just a
you could if that's available on Cardano, which it currently is not. You can't encrypt anything for what's actually been posted on chain. We've been told that this from our entire dev team and M Labs and everyone we work with, that you would have, it's potentially possible, but not currently. You'd have to have like a full hard fork update of the entire chain to manage encryption processes.
Interesting.
Yeah, whereas on other chains, that's exactly how oracles work, right? It's a consumable piece. They put up a ton of different ones that all have an encryption for exactly the company that asked for it, under whatever parameters, and then they go and then they actually consume that. But because there's so many things being pushed out there, so many pieces of data for consumption being pushed out there, every one of them is another transaction on chain, which then congests the chain and can increase gas fees and stuff like on Ethereum. But on Cardano, because it's an infinitely referenceable input, it's only one.
Okay.
But we can't encrypt it.
Yeah, interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Which is the bad thing for the business.
Yeah, but I definitely believe you, right? If you have M Labs and these other folks who are just like about as good as it gets. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to look into that more. But okay, cool. So with that, before we run too long, so what is?
I believe we probably already have.
We have. That's okay. So what is? Because this has all been really good. So right now we're at the end of August.
Yep.
We spoke almost exactly a year ago. So let's say next time we get back together in person, right? What are you excited between now and then of like what you're hoping to see, where you're hoping to see Charli3 grow and sort of open-ended, so where you think that's going? What are you guys excited about?
We would absolutely love to see something that enables us to manage cross-chain, where another chain's project can actually access the data that we've posted on Cardano, or to allow our UTXOs to somehow be written on both chains at once from the aggregation process. Because the aggregation process, especially for the on-demand, is off-chain computation. So if we can manage that and be able to hash two different datums on two different chains at the same time for the same data, that would be sweet, because then we can expand out that way. That would be the ultimate goal. But going into the future, honestly, we just hope for more adoption of Cardano and understanding why oracles are necessary, right? The security risks of them. I know Josh just put out a nice video on the security risks of not using an oracle solution, a third party. And that's mainly what we want to see. And we would love to make sure that we have our on-demand product out and on-chain managed. So that's really...
That's a whole other thing I want to ask you about.
We'll do another one.
That'll be next time. We'll talk about certifiable randomness.
So we want to do that. I actually just had a talk with Riley from Summon Platform, and he said he figured out a different way to manage randomness without having to do much work. I was like, oh sweet, let's explore.
Awesome.
But yeah, for a year from now, I would say just keep improving the product, see more adoption of the Oracle in general for security of the Cardano blockchain and further, and then hopefully it can go cross-chain eventually.
Awesome. Hey, well, Damon, thank you so much for the time. Always good sitting down with you and going on hikes with you in nature. Maybe next time we'll find, if it's not here, we'll go on a walk somewhere else. And this is actually, it was your idea. We'll try and do next time. We'll try and do it like from the trail. And we'll do an interview like that. So anyway, thank you so much again. If you guys have any questions for Charli3, you can find them on Twitter, or if not, let us know in the comments down below. Any parting thoughts for anyone?
No parting thoughts, but if you want access to basically all of our open source documentation, you can go to docs.charli3.io. It's all there. We haven't put it out publicly yet, but go ahead and use it.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody. Let us know down below if you have any questions for them, and if nothing else, we'll see you next week.
Bye.